Travis Wayne Goodsell. It's conference weekend. I can already tell, despite YouTube shutting me down by orders of the church. I can already tell it's conference weekend. So, I thought I'd do a video discussing the differences with Freemasonry, with Brigham Young and his endowment, and the original Joseph Smith with the ancient rituals that go on in the temple. There's a lot of confusion, especially out in the world, not just within Mormonism. So, Joseph Smith's with the ancient was just washing and anointings. That was all that was needed to be endowed with power from on high. And you should be able to remember it yourself when you go through the washings and anointings. Washings, you become a high priest and a high priestess. It's after the order of Melchizedek, even though they say priest and priestess. And so it's high priest and high priestess. And that's the Zodic part of Melchizedek. Then you go to the anointing, king and queen. Order of Melchizedek, because that's Melech. So now Melchizedek. And with anointing, anoint in Greek is Christ. So you become Christ. You take upon yourselves the name Christ. So sure enough, you take upon yourselves the name of Christ. With that baptism, you are willing to take upon yourselves the name of Christ and go down the path that leads into the temple to become a Christ. That is the Jewish concept of a Christ. And so you can see the damage that Emperor Constantine did with Jesus. Not just that now Christians are weaponized against Jews for wrongly blaming Jews for murdering a non-existent person who never appeared in history, and is written as the learning of the Jews, manner of prophesying of the Jews. That's what the Gospels were originally. So, then you have the Freemasonry, which is not a temple ritual, but they were Masons who, in their lore, helped build the Temple of Solomon. And their ritual that they performed for anybody to see, it wasn't a sacred secret. It wasn't something that required a death penalty for. This is where people have mistakenly not understood, is that you didn't have to be a member to watch the passion play that was played out. It was actually a murder mystery. As I'm watching the increase for conference weekend. Yep, this is why they shut me down, guys. Without fail. This is when people finally say, you know what, I wonder what's going on with the church. It's conference weekend. Let's see what's going on. Oh, here's somebody I've never heard of before. As if he would all of a sudden started up a channel. And so, their little ritual play involves...
Karen, you have a visitor. Kurt Karen, you have a visitor.
A murder mystery. They find the body of Hiram Abiff, who represents Osiris for the Egyptian pyramid temple. Though it's Solomon's temple, I've gone over with you the Egyptian of Paleo-Hebrew. David is the 18th dynasty Dawut Moshe. Dawut Moshe. Phonetically the same. And so this goes to the Egyptian stories of Set murdering his brother Osiris. And the members, or the initiate, is involved together to find out who done it. And that's where the secrecy part comes in, is that there's a murderer loose, and they need to find out who did it, and they need to restore the throne of Osiris. So thus, the Knights Templar has the Holy Grail, the bloodline. That's the secret that they're keeping. That they don't want to reveal the bloodline under penalty of death because they need to restore the throne. And that's for the latter days. So that's where all that comes from. And it's not for the Freemasons as citizens. It's in the play where the secrecy needs to be kept. And so, like I said, you don't have to be a member. You can watch and see it. And go and tell everybody what you saw. It was so awesome. The murder of Hiram Abiff, that was so cool. There's nothing sinister about it. And so it's within the play itself that you're supposed to keep the secrets and not tell anybody under penalty of death. And so you can see how it ties in with the ancient temple rituals that Joseph Smith also started with the washing and anointings, the Christ. So with Joseph Smith, he's letting Mormons be the parents for the future Christ, the bloodline. Now do you understand the Mormon Christ from section 103:16 that I've been going over with you and over and over and over and over and over and over and over? We're the learning of the Jews. We are not Christian. Jesus is not our Christ. He doesn't exist. He doesn't have a bloodline. He's a fictional character. And so, Brigham Young, he was denounced by the Warsaw Lodge, the Grand Master, who created the Nauvoo Lodge with Joseph Smith as the Master Mason, despite the opposition from the Warsaw Lodge members. And he didn't follow the Passion Play. But yeah, you will notice some similarities with name signs and tokens. And the 5 points of fellowship. But that was not his point. He's not interested in the bloodline. That's why he murdered Joseph Smith and Hiram, to put a stop and end to the bloodline. But using Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon, turning them Christian with Jesus, to mock that whole concept of a bloodline to restore the throne. As Brigham becomes Set, who murdered Joseph Smith, who represents Osiris. You see how that worked? And he has instead an endowment ceremony added to it, as he belittles the washing and anointings. So no longer do you become a Christ. No longer are you anointed king and queen, high priest and high priestess. You're just in preparation to become such. You still have to go through the endowment ceremony, then you have to live a worthy life, and it's considered for the afterlife. No. See, he's taken you far away from the original intent. That was his whole purpose. And so he now has 5 covenants. There were more. Death to America was one of them, as well as polygamy in place of the law of chastity. But the blood atonement thing, that comes from the penalties. So, sorry Mormons, you're lying to people when you're dismissing the penalty requirements in the temple rituals. And it's my theory, scientific theory, not guess, my opinion, it's my theory, that the elevator shaft was for hangings of those who violated their temple covenants. Because that's how they did it in those days. You had a rope. So, similar to Judas, the betrayer of Jesus. So he turns it around, you betray him, you become Judas, and you get hanged. And so they're loyalty oaths to the church under the penalty of death. And you have to pay tithing in order to go to the temple to take out the oaths and the penalty of death. Yeah, isn't that great? So you can see the difference in the different processes. Brigham Young wants nothing to do with a man like Moses. That's prophesied in Deuteronomy 18:15 through 18, the Christ. So, with that,
Paul Youngblood, you have a delivery.
we are at
Come downstairs, please. Paul Youngblood, please come downstairs.
Awesome.